Okay, I want to start this video. It says graph y equals x minus 6 by plotting points. So what we're going to do to plot points is we need to make a table of x and y values. So in class we're going to learn how to use our graphing calculator, but I just want to show how we're going to find these values kind of like longhand. So let me move this off to the side. Let's move that over here. What we need to do first is we need to pick some x values. So how am I going to pick these x values for these first ones? I'm really just going to make them up. So I'm going to pick a number like -1 and then 0 and 1. I always pick 0 because that's a very easy one to compute. So now how do we find the y values associated? Well, we're going to take our equation. Y is equal to x minus 6, and we're going to plug in for each of our x values. So the first one we're going to test is x is equal to -1. You see right here I have -1 as the point I picked. So now if I plug -1 in for x, we get y is equal to -1 minus 6, and we know that -1 minus 6 is -7. All right, now we're going to do this again for, well, hold on, let me put that in there. So when we had -1 for x, we got -7 for y. Now we're going to do this again for our next x value. If x is equal to 0, then y is equal to, we're going to plug in here, and it's going to be 0 minus 6. So we have y is equal to -6. So when x was 0, y was -6. Last one, if x is equal to 1, then y is equal to 1 minus 6. 1 minus 6 is -5. Now take a look over here. How does this table right here help me get points? Well, take a look. This is the point -1, -7. Let's go ahead and graph that point. So I'm going to go over to my graph, and we're going to go left 1 and then down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I'm going to plot that point right there. Now we're going to do the same thing with 0, -6. 0, -6 is right here. And finally 1, -5. 1, -5 is going to be, 1, -5 is going to be right there. And it's going to be difficult for me to make a completely straight line. I'm going to do the best I can. But we can see here's our line that goes through those. Okay? Now, take a look at this next one we're going to work on here. It says graph 2x minus 3y equals 6 by plotting points. The first thing you always want to do, especially, it doesn't matter if we're going to be plotting points or finding the slope or y-intercept, which we're going to do in the next video, you need to always solve for y. This is why we worked really hard on getting y by itself in the formula section. But what we want to do is we want to take this equation, 2x minus 3y equals 6, and we want to solve that for y. How do I do that? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 2x from each side. It's going to make these go away. I'm going to get -3y equals, now I talked about this a little bit last week, but we can write this as 6 minus 2x, right? We can't put those together. They're not like terms. But for the sake of getting myself in a good habit of getting this in a form I want, which we'll talk about later, I want that x term next to the equal sign. So I'm going to write this -2x plus 6. And take a look. That's a +6 and a -2x. So we just write them next to each other, -2x plus 6. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything by -3. And these cancel out, and we get y is equal to -2 divided by -3 is a +2/3. We just write that fraction out front, and then 6. And now 6 divided by -3 is a -2. Now I have my equation solved for y. Now I'm going to go ahead and set my x-y table up. Okay, let's set this x and y table up. So we got our x, we got our y. Now for this problem, we're not going to just pick any. One thing we want to take note of is when we have a fraction next to our x, we want to pick multiples of the denominator. Take a look. What is our denominator? You see we have a 3 down there in the denominator. So I'm going to pick -3, 0, and 3. We do this so that I get whole number solutions. If you pick numbers like 1 or 2, you're going to see we're going to get some nasty fractions. So I pick multiples of the denominator and also 0, because 0 is always a really easy one to compute. So now we're going to take these and we're going to plug them in for x. So if x is equal to negative 3, y is equal to 2/3 times negative 3 minus 2. 2/3 times negative 3 is negative 2 minus 2. We get y is equal to negative 4. So when x was negative 3, y is negative 4. Now the next one, if x is 0, then we get y is equal to 2/3 times 0 minus 2. 2/3 times 0 is just 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Last one, if x is 3, we get y is equal to, we get y is equal to 2/3 times 3 minus 2. 2/3 times 3 is 2, and then we bring down that minus 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. Again, these correspond to the points. My first point is negative 3, negative 4. So let's plot that. Negative 3, negative 4, left 3, down 4. All right, our next point is 0, negative 2. That's going to be this point right here. Again, we graph 3 points, so I make sure that I didn't do any algebra incorrectly, because if I get a point that's somewhere else on this line, I might have to go back and double check my math, but I can see that these fall on a straight line. Again, I can't really do a ruler on the computer, but we see that that's going to be our that's going to be our graph by plotting points. In the next video, we're going to learn how to do another graph by using the slope and y-intercept.